Hey there, I am Katie from Beacon Education Solutions, coming to you from my living room. In this segment, we're going to address a concern that many students with disabilities are voicing right now. The concern that in addition to all the things I need to do to support my child at home with their education, I also have this pages-long IEP that includes accommodations, services, goals. I can't possibly provide for that. How is my child ever going to catch up? So what we're going to talk about today is progress monitoring, a way to both support your child's IEP now and prepare him or her to get back on track when schools reopen. So in late March, the Maryland Department of Education put out a technical assistance bulletin that addressed students that were receiving special education services at that time in the schools. And they specifically addressed the question, if my child's IEP services aren't being given, will compensatory services be provided once school is back in session? And they answered that question in the same document and said, maybe. It depends. It depends on, and I quote, compensatory services are needed when there is a decline in the student's skills, a lack of progress in the general education curriculum, or on the IEP goals during the extended school closure. So the idea is that when schools do reopen, the IEP teams will convene and determine whether your student needs compensatory services, not due to the fact that he or she did not receive the services that are written in his IEP during the closure, but, and let's face it, most students are not receiving ideal education at this moment in time. Students with disabilities or no. But if the alternative that was provided to your student during closure caused him or her to decline in his or her skills, cause them to lose progress towards the general education curriculum, or they were not able to lose progress towards their IEP goals. Now, how is that going to be determined? Teachers are constantly taking data, so it is very possible that special education teachers or classroom teachers took data just prior to schools being closed that they could then compare with data when schools reopen that they would take. But it's just as likely that data won't be available because on the other end of the data taking spectrum, providers are only required to take IEP goal data at a bare minimum of 4 times a school year, unless of course IEP goals specifically state otherwise. So, as with everything that is education, there is a range of possibility. So, how do we prepare? The answer is take baseline data on your child's IEP goals now and continue to monitor progress as your child continues distance learning. If you've got your child's IEP on hand, let's walk through that. So take a look at Roman numeral 4 goals, the goal section, and look at the heading and the overall goal. It's right at the top for each goal. So if this is a goal that you can work on at home or that you're receiving support from the school, this is a goal that you want to take data on. Not all goals can be worked on at home. For example, social emotional goals that involve direct interaction with peers or functional behavioral goals that require your child to be in the classroom setting in order to work on it. But many of the academic goals can be supported at home or through distance learning and should be. So that overall goal is right at the top, and then the objectives underneath it, there's 4 spaces, usually 2 or 3 are written out, is what you're going to take data on. And it can be as simple as keeping a journal. Write down the date, 1 sentence about what you did with your child or what your child worked on, and what he or she was able to do. Let's see. Say you have a child with a goal focused on sounding out 3-letter words. Write the date that you read a book with your child and had him working on, let's say, the 23-letter words that were in the book, and write down that he was able to, say, sound out 5 of those words with help, or without help, 10 words with some help, and 5 words with heavy help. And then the next week do the same thing, possibly with a different book, but again with 3-letter words so that you're still getting at the meat of the IEP goal. So that's data monitoring, that's data collection, that's progress monitoring. You compare the two over time, you compare all the data points you take over time, and then you can see if your child is making progress or is not making progress. So the first time you take that data, that's what's called your baseline data, and is the place you and the IEP team can consider your child was performing before break, even though it's not before break at this point, it can still be considered that baseline data. And then further progress monitoring is what you'll compare to your baseline data in order to show that your child is making gains or is not making gains for that compensatory service piece that we talked about before. Okay, now if you look on the same goal pages, look at the bottom half of the page, you'll see the progress towards goals section. These are typically sent out with report cards. It's that 4 times a year requirement that need to be reported to parents and sent home. So if you have your child's last progress report from when quarter 2 ended, you can take a look at that, look at the most recent date, and you can even use that as baseline data. Or you can ask your child's special education teacher or general education teacher if they've taken any data prior to break. So all of those things could be used for baseline data, the very first starting point. So progress monitoring is functional in many ways. Another major one that you can use it for is to inform you early on what's working for your child and where things need to be tweaked. Remember, you have the right to call an IEP meeting, even during quarantine, in order to discuss a need for reasonable supports and get input from the entire team. So included below is a link to progress monitoring templates the Parents Place of Maryland have published. If you don't know them, Parents Place is an invaluable resource and full of incredibly knowledgeable parents of students with disabilities who are going through this too. And there's a link below to their homepage as well. Okay, so now this is the tip of the iceberg in terms of how to make progress monitoring work for you. Every child's IEP is different and unique by definition, and so are the goals and what will work best for progress monitoring. If you have any questions or just want to bounce something off us, please don't hesitate to reach out. Beacon staff includes advocates, former teachers, parents of students with disabilities, and we are here to help. We can also help you create data monitoring systems for specific IEP goals if that would be helpful. Just visit our Facebook page below and leave us a message. So we talked about what progress monitoring is today, what baseline data is, giving you some resources for how to do that and how you can use it to support your child's IEP. That's it for today. Please make sure to take care of yourself as you take care of your children.